The Nigerian Governors Forum has denied allegations that state hoarded palliatives that were looted in the wake of the NSAS protest, saying the looted food items in warehouses across the nation were reserved for a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic as well as for the vulnerable. But Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdurrazak said the relief materials were already being distributed in the state when the hoodlums attacked this distribution point at the Ilorin airport. In a statement yesterday, the governor stated that some of the properties stolen and vandalized include palliatives set aside for vulnerable members of the society. The NGF said since the NSAS demonstration started, they held meetings to address the underlying concerns, adding that its members had aligned themselves with a call for justice leading up to the setting up of judicial panel of inquiries in the state to probe police brutality. They are saying they didn't hold this second wave of COVID-19. That's the first time I'm going to hear that. Did we have a second wave?
Well, no, we didn't, but it's not the first time it's going to be made public that there's a possibility of a second wave. You might recall at the end of September, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu, the DG of the NCDC, did say that Nigeria having a second wave was possible with the reopening of schools, resumption of a lot of activities, travel, and what have you. But that hasn't actually happened yet. He was just saying, you know, let's not rest on our laurels where coronavirus is concerned. But this being used as an excuse in this manner is actually amusing to me. It's a really hollow excuse as far as I'm concerned. And it must be said, the palliatives, the COVID palliatives were meant to support the most vulnerable in our society. We have a percentage, 48% of Nigerians live below the poverty line. A total shutdown was obviously devastating for that population. It was meant for them. This kind of costly procrastination has now created a situation whereby it was not always the most vulnerable that went and sacked those warehouses. We saw some people who are looking rather affluent also going to take advantage of it. So it just completely negates the whole point of CACOVID's efforts. You recall that it was Nigeria's billionaires, business moguls, private organizations who forked out about $56 million to support Nigeria's fight against COVID-19. And it's so sad that something like this has happened. It just goes to show that we really have a long way to go in terms of true public service. It's supposed to be a service. Nobody has the right to hoard in warehouses. It's disgraceful.
Well, I think that what has happened with regard to angry youths, protesters, and even members of the middle class going to, make a way, because I was being careful. I didn't want to use the word loot, because most people say, no, do not say they looted. Say that they went to take back what belongs to them. I think it's a wake-up call for governors across the country. And yesterday, the Nigerian Governors Forum tried to explain its position by saying that those palliatives, those materials across the country were not being hoarded, but that they were being kept for a second wave. Well, it is true that Dr. Ihekwazu talked about the possibility of a second wave. But what we've seen in the reports, in the weekly briefings, is that, the numbers being reported seem to have gone down. In some states of the Federation, we're even told that there have been no reports of any fresh infections for weeks. And even in Lagos, the number, as of yesterday, was down to 77 infection rate per day. And in the Federal Capital Territory, it was down to 26. In any case, many Nigerians are likely to be skeptical with regard to the explanation that has been given by the governors, the Nigeria Governors Forum, looking at the scale, the size, the scope, the volume of palliatives that were released from unexplainable detention by those released by the state governments. However, I find the explanation by the CACOVID group, which is a private coalition that in part made available these palliatives to the state governments, and also the explanation by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. And the explanation is as follows. According to the CACOVID, the private coalition led by the central bank and key figures in the private sector, they said, look, it took a time it took some time to be able to get these palliatives because of the volume required and also because of the production cycle and because they needed to buy directly from the manufacturers. And it was only recently that they sent out most of the consignments to the states. And most of those palliatives are even in a warehouse here in Lagos for onward distribution to states. And that so far, only 10 states have been able to flag off the distribution. But that most of the states have not even received the balance of the palliatives that they were supposed to get from COVID. Now, in the case of Kwara State, the governor is on record as having said, in fact, in Kwara, they had even started distributing the palliatives before you had this incident with relation to the warehouse and the NSAS protest. So I'd rather go with the explanation by the private sector coalition. And the argument is that, look, because of the riots, some of the flag-offs in some other states could not take place, and they had to suspend it. That COVID group did not talk about second wave. You know, they just explained the issues of logistics that they have had. But what we're dealing with here is, again, this question of trust deficit. No matter what the governors say, the people will not believe them. The people will just assume that, look, those warehouses and the volume of materials that the people found there, the explanation that they were waiting for a second wave will not be acceptable. More so, as there have been a lot of skepticism about whether anybody got these palliatives or not. So this is some kind of wake-up call for the governors. And when we had the Femi Falana SAN on this program yesterday, he made a point. He said, look, take the example, follow the example of the governor of Sokoto State, the Right Honorable Aminu Tambuwa, who did not even bother to hoard any palliative materials, who gave everything out. And that now is the time to distribute those palliatives. Because as you can see, the people need them. And the people are anxious that these palliatives that have been made available by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and also the private sector coalition should get to the people. But of course, the more important point that we have made previously, which needs to be reiterated, and which the private sector coalition pointed out, is that there must be a proper accounting of all these palliative materials.
Yes, really.
And the COVID indicated that they have engaged KPMG, an audit firm, to audit the materials, and we hope that there will be enough transparency even at the state level.
And that has to be done, and we need to see those reports, audited reports, really. The federal government has expressed shock at the looting of warehouses across the country, begging those who looted medical storage facilities to return the vaccines and other medical consumables they carted away. Government also explained that the inability of some states to complete the distribution of palliatives sent to them by COVID, a private sector coalition supporting the national response against COVID-19, led to the storage of palliatives meant for 1.7 million households affected by the coronavirus pandemics. Vaccines looted?
But when those get looted, if at all they ever get returned, are they still safe to use? This is the problem with the vaccine. Yeah. In what condition were they stored when they were looted? This is the complete foolishness of a mobocracy. It makes no sense to go and loot vaccines, for crying out loud. I mean, people have a lot of sympathy for those who went and freed the Gary or what have you, because it could just go off in the warehouse, right, while it was sitting there. So there was no point, hoarding that. But a vaccine, surely we could do better than that. That's completely disgraceful. The Gary was liberated from oppression. When you say the word liberated,
guess what comes to my mind? What? Like Che Guevara going to liberate Gary.
Yes. The Gary was liberated.
Let this point be made. I think the security agencies are already out there arresting some of the persons who took the palliatives. And in some states, some persons have actually been arrested. They've been forced to return what they stole. But the most scandalous story is a case of palliatives stolen from or taken from Benue State, taken to Kano, and these materials, cartons upon cartons of, is it Indomie, are being sold in a market in Kano, with COVID palliative boldly written on those cartons. So I guess that the security agencies also have some work to do here in terms of intelligence gathering and making sure that the things that could be retrieved from those people. However, it's very unfortunate. And when you have a revolt on your hands, anything can happen. Most unfortunate that all the well-meaning individuals who contributed to that Kakuvid fund and who meant well, who provided food, who provided isolation centers, who provided equipment, and genuinely wanted to help people, and I've now been confronted with this reality.
It's so upsetting for them.
As a result of mismanagement of processes.
That's quite very sad. There are lots of plenty Luther Vandrosses out there. That's all on news. Let me take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio. Rosus, Michael, and this has given us updates on African Global COVID-19 pandemic. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. Rotus, the dependable Odiri, how are you?
Rufai is inside jokes. Rufai, good morning to you. Good morning, Tundu.
Inside jokes
And Rufai is always teasing me about stuff. Good morning, Doctor. We begin with the organized private sector. They sent out a press release condemning the violence and the looting that we saw, of course, in the wake of the aftermath of the violence following the NSARS protest. The press release, first of all, I pushed for peaceful protests. They identified with peaceful protests, but then they condemned violence and looting that, of course, was, at the hands of miscreants, thugs that hijacked the movement. And then they called on the federal government, well, they called on the security authorities, police, army and so on, that they should, try to secure the states, there's the press release right there, and also restore safety and order to the country. Now, of course, the organized private sector made up of the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, Nigeria's Employers Consultative Association, the Nigeria Association of Chamber, Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, Nigeria Association of Small Scale Industries, Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. So all those bodies. They also called on dialogue with the youth and most importantly, jobs, because this is also an income inequality discussion with respect to what's going on here, and why individuals continue to desperately uproot ATMs thinking they can get cash on them. We're out in the field yesterday looking at different banks that were hurt yesterday for the Global Business Report. So they've also called for dialogue, and they've called for a frank discussion between government and youth in order to try and provide them these jobs, because income inequality continues to widen, and you can see it here in the commercial capital of Nigeria, Lagos State. Coronation Insurance, formerly WAPIC Insurance, they also put out a press release as well. They were commiserating with Nigerians as to the loss of life. In their press release, them being an insurance company, and we talked a lot about insurance yesterday on the Global Business Report. Boston Omofaye, who of course hosts Arise Exchange, which our viewers can watch every day, 7 p.m. You can also watch the Global Business Report every day at 11 p.m. and 3 p.m. West African time. But they talked a lot about insurance, and so with Coronation Insurance coming out with their own press release stating that they're going to do what they can to provide platforms that can allow people to put forward claims that can allow business owners to recoup their losses. So the private sector has come out in full voice, but again, the conversation does have to focus on widening income inequality, the influx of individuals coming into the state of Lagos looking for opportunity, not being able to find it, and then having to resort to whether it's gang activity. I think the answer is jobs. If you can try to provide more jobs, you will reduce, I think, my studies, you will reduce, and also studies I've read, you will reduce the amount of violence that you see around, because, as they say, an idle hand is the devil's workshop, as it is. Also, traffic. Look, if you live from Lagos Business School, after Ibrahim Adesanya, going towards Ibejuleki, Shangotedo, further out into Lekki. Yesterday was a nightmare. Global Business Report, the second segment ends at 4 p.m. I left the office at 4:20. Didn't get home until almost 9:40. Why? Because of rain. There was a lot of rain yesterday, and for some reason, whenever there's a lot of rain, the city just shuts down. This is just traffic that we've observed across the states. The roads continue to choke productivity. A 1 hour journey yesterday from the island to the outskirts of Lekki it's supposed to be 1 hour. It took about 5 hours yesterday. Now, if you subtract the 1 hour you should use for commuting, what do you do within those 4 hours? Think about a logistics company that wants to make a delivery. Think about if you're a florist that delivers flowers, if you're a caterer that delivers food, if you are emergency services that needs to get through traffic and there's somebody hits and run and you need to get that person to the hospital. If you're a police that needs to respond to a robbery, you know, those 4 hours that are lost, if you multiply that by each person, I could have scheduled more guests for the Global Business Report. I could have read third quarter financial reports for companies I want to report on. I could have read a research report. I could have gone to the gym and improved my own health. And you know, you could do so much. So the organized private sector and everybody else that is commiserating with loss of life and property, and also talking about the economy, because in their press release they talked about the economy and how security needs to be beefed up in order to protect the economy. This conversation we're going into 2021, we still have not improved infrastructure here that can improve productivity, because this is still affecting businesses. And for people who keep responding and saying everybody should move to the island, if everybody moves to the island, then you're just going to carry the gridlock to you. An improved, developed society is supposed to have a multitude of road networks that allow for commuters to get from point A to point B in time, and also get businesses to complete their deliveries in time, because the productivity matter continues to be a drag on the economy. And for it to be happening in the commercial capital of Lagos State is still a tragedy that we have to face.
Rotes, I'm going to come in with your Instagram post with your caps lock. You had a good rant about the traffic and your whole 7 situation. Yeah. But let us now use this opportunity to remind the governor of Lagos of his major campaign promises, one of which was traffic management. He did promise to resolve gridlock in, you know, those strategic areas within 9 months. He made promises about multimodal transport. He made promises about the blue rail line and the red rail line, which is supposed to be ready 2021 and 2022 respectively. And then also, with regards to that awful footage that we all saw of BRT buses going up in flames, we now see the very real consequences, because Governor Sanwo-Olu, who was a candidate then, said he was going to increase the BRT fleet. All of these will help enormously in the problem that you've identified, which we all feel. So many man-hours are wasted in traffic. All I can say to you is maybe just watch 7 and your other movies that you watch, or get some audio books. Okay. I don't know what to tell you, Rotes. It's awful.
I can imagine. It's quite very awful. I think it was the last administration where there was a story in the papers that Governor Ambode then says we lose about over 400 billion in Lagos to traffic on a yearly basis. Right. And I was shocked when the governor said that, and I thought that was going to elicit action. But you know what happens? When we see stats, it doesn't elicit action. All of this is caused by developmental milestones that were not put in place. The blue rail we're talking about, Lateef Jakonde started doing a rail in the 80s because that was the same time the French metro launched. Yeah. So he was trying to adapt sort of like the French metro when he started that project. Till today, the project is not completed. Lagos can't function if we have buses and cars on the streets. Too many cars on the streets of Lagos, it won't work. We don't have even roads. Till today, we've not talked about the coastal road in Lekki. It's not supposed to be one road in, one road out around Lekki. There was supposed to be a coastal road in the works. That has not been done. We've not invested in roads. Nigeria has over 923,000 square kilometers, and we have just over 190,000 square kilometers of road. Italy has 365,000 square kilometers of landmass, and they have 650,000 square kilometers for road. So for every 1 kilometer, Italy has 2 kilometers of road. For every 1 kilometer of landmass. That's the way a country grows. And please, maybe if the private sector will come into this rail thing in Lagos, it will move forward. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's slower than Thornbella Bridge traffic for me, this rail idea.
Let me start from where both of you stopped. First, to say that, yes, Tundu is absolutely right. The Lagos State government, the present government, campaigned on the basis of 6 pillars, what Governor Sanwo-Olu called themes. And the very first T there, the first pillar, is about traffic management and transportation. The M in the themes, that's the fourth pillar, is making Lagos a 21st century city. Now, you can't make Lagos a 21st century city if people are spending half the time on the roads. That Lekki Expressway axis that you were talking about, look, it could get worse. It's in that axis that you have the free trade zone. If that free trade zone starts and that Lekki Expressway all the way to this end is not dualized, then we're going to have very serious problems. Even in terms of traffic management, LASMA, which is the agency that is responsible for that, has not been so efficient, despite the fact that the governor even tried to provide some incentives in the early days of the administration. The Sanwo-Olu administration has spent 500 days. Now, that administration cannot continue to give any excuse. And I hope that the subject of transportation will be a big issue at the economic summit that is being planned for the first week of November. They call it Eimbeti 2020. I hope that at that particular economic summit, all of these issues will come up. How do we move faster with the blue line, the rail line? There's something the Lagos State government calls the coastal line, which they are trying to construct to free up traffic in that axis that you referred to. But this coastal line, this coastal road has remained majorly an aspiration. Right. Now, they're talking about the fourth mainland bridge. Now, that fourth mainland bridge, we're told that some steps have been taken. But is it possible in the life of this administration in Lagos State to deliver on that fourth mainland bridge that they've always been talking about? And it's not just on the island. Look, the situation is worse where ordinary people like us live. Now, if you go towards Abule Egba, you go towards Penn Cinema, Agege axis. Now, there is a bridge they are constructing there. They're not moving fast enough with it. And there are arterial roads in Lagos that also need to be fixed. Now, but the point, again, is about multimodal transportation. Right. They talk about water transportation in Lagos. How useful is that? You know, what level of investment have they put into it? So these are the challenges, and it's also unfortunate that anytime it rains in Lagos, everything grinds to a halt.
All right, thank you so much, Rotus. All the things you say were correct, Dr. Abati, except for one. You say ordinary people like you are not an ordinary man, Dr. Abati. Moving on to business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London.
Good morning. Yes. So I'm going to bring the mood down a bit, if I may, because it's Wall Street, basically, everybody's worried about, and the US election. Wall Street had one of its worst sessions overnight. Election jitters, US stimulus plan unagreed, of course. And that sort of carried through to Asia in lots of ways. However, the guiding light, as ever, is China. Industrial profits year-on-year fell by 2.4% as they were announced overnight. An improvement, I mean, a fall, but this is an improvement, minus 4.4. It's slightly disappointed the markets, but everywhere else, China is beginning to, as the markets put it, star globally, really. And we get the PMIs later this week, over the weekend, and then the less official PMIs, private business PMIs, next Monday, and both should actually steady the ship. Yuan continues to outperform. I'm going to come on to Ant Financial now. Here's a thing for you. This, I know we covered a little bit of it yesterday, but this is going to be the biggest IPO in the world. It was founded by Jack Ma, who's the founder of Alibaba. It tops Aramco, and it's been priced at the top end of expectations. I'm actually going to close the book earlier on this for applications. It starts trading on November the 5th. That's 4 days, so 2 days after the election. People have been buying into this at about 20-to-1 leverage on the price. They may get it, they may not. Depends on how it's being affected by the general fall in the stock market. But as people are looking at it right now, it is bound to be very successful. So the Nikkei down about 0.5%. China's Shanghai down about 0.5% as well. Elsewhere, Asia, in Asia, Singapore down, Australia down again, and the Asian markets basically are benefiting from not buying so enthusiastically into the US stimulus trade as Wall Street had. But again, the COVID-19, this is continuing now, worries about it, and it's beginning to crush European equities as well. Asia won't be immune from it. It'll be a very, very risk-filled week. As I say, that bright spot will be probably Ant Financial. HSBC, by complete contrast, here's a bank, will accelerate its restructuring plans, slashing costs much more quickly than had been expected. Bank revenues down 11%, 3.2 billion of those dollars, of the 11.9 coming from business in Asia. It hasn't said it'll mean more jobs will go. If you remember, I brought to you the news that 35,000 were going to go in February, but this coming February, but the plan on is basically on hold. So here's now the United States. We're going to get durable goods. Again, I'm sorry about all the statistics this morning, but that's the way it goes, really. Durable goods probably up in the United States by about 0.5%. US data has also outperformed most things, and particularly about the election noise as well, coming from the United States. Basically, looking at what's happening in Europe as well, there are severe threats to the consumption side of the global recovery. So with all the talk about China, it's essential to remember that whatever happens in the United States, they used to say if Wall Street catches a cold, sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. I mean, you can apply that to COVID-19. If there's going to be a big problem there, and it looks like there is, then the rest of the world's going to suffer. As far as commodities are concerned, oil had another rather torrid trading session yesterday. Again, the future of it is fairly cloudy. It's all really about consumption. Though gold and silver, now here's a bit of strength there. Yeah, they have been caught within their trading triangle. Sorry to be technical about it, but that's how the market looks at it. But gold gold's going to increase, basically. If there's more risk, then there are more people will be going on. And it does suggest that US election risk hedging, if I can put it like this, is starting to pick up momentum. So not a rather gloomy morning, really, as far as the markets are concerned. Lots of risk around, lots of uncertainty, but that's the global view.
Okay, Michael, I just want you to, explain to me what a lot of business owners can learn from a man called Jack Ma. Same Jack Ma had one of the biggest IPOs in New York then when he did 25 billion for Alibaba. Now, Ant Financial, that Jack Ma is part of, has done this other IPO that is said to be one of the biggest in the world. He keeps moving, he keeps doing well. He's in all the tech businesses you can ever think of. It's in retail with Alibaba. He's also in a very vital area of cloud computing. He's got his own cloud platforms and the likes. And this man has done 2 big IPOs in the space of about 6 years. What is it to learn about this man, Jack Ma?
Well, it's as you've said. I mean, he's the top of his markets, isn't he? That's the other thing. But it should be pointed out that investors are still looking for a big return, and they're looking at Ant Financial and the way it's positioned, both in Hong Kong and in mainland China. And they're looking at it and thinking this is probably going to be quite good, basically. They're looking for winners. And so far, Jack Ma's done that. Alibaba wasn't the first. And it's important in lots of markets not to be the first. He came in second with that and is done extremely well. I think Ant Financial, as it straddles consumers, it straddles fintech as well, and it's guaranteed to do well. I mean, you're looking at the way investors are going at that one, they're risking the actual results of it, if you like. The way it's forward is leveraged at 1 to 20, which is absolutely huge, and that there's a huge amount of optimism in that. So you've got this kind of dichotomy, haven't you, between the mature Western world and its old-fashioned economies, and something like Ant Financial riding the crest of the tech wave. That's the secret to it. I mean, I wouldn't attempt it myself because, I'm not Jack Ma, of course, and neither are you, neither any of us. He's got a very, very good position there, but he's firmly riding a wave at the moment. That's the secret.
Well, Michael, that's something I would like you to help me clarify. Foreigners are snapping up China government bonds. Meanwhile, local investors are dumping the notes inside China, more or less. What is the attraction with regard to China government bonds? Why is it so popular with foreigners and it's not popular at home?
I don't think they're there for returns. I think they're there because they feel as though it's a relatively safe bet. I mean, as I was saying right at the beginning of all this, and I tend to be saying this most mornings, really, because it's the way that things are, that globally, China is a shining light, and people would like a slice of that. They're not getting massive returns because the risk is slightly considered to be less in China than it is in the rest of the world. Domestically, that's the problem. I mean, it's very difficult to look at China. Exports, yes. Imports quite good as well, but domestic demand, that's the key to it. How quickly can they build up domestic demand? They tried to do it in Japan, didn't really succeed. China's is similar in lots of ways. You have this huge possible bunch of consumers. How do you actually get them to spend? They can bet, and they're betting on Jack Ma at the moment, aren't they? Obviously, but how do you actually get them to spend? That's the secret to it. So I think, to answer your question, people are looking at these bonds and thinking China at the moment is a very safe bet. It's growing hugely. If you believe the story from China, and that of course is another issue, then you want to get invested in it. It's as simple as that.
All right, yeah, China is growing 4.7%. America not doing well, minus 9.9%. Very sad times for the world economy, but China has been the shining light. Let's go to COVID-19 pandemic and talk more about what we're saying as regards the vaccines. Adesuwa has got that story for us. Adesuwa, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Indeed, I have that story and many more. Good morning, Dr. Bati, and good morning, Tundu. Let's look at the global figures. Over 43 million people we know have been infected with the coronavirus globally. Now, cases are soaring in the US and Europe, but the WHO is warning that abandoning efforts to control the pandemic is dangerous. The World Health Body Chief, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, yesterday acknowledged that after months of battling the coronavirus, which has claimed 1.1 million people globally, a certain level of pandemic fatigue has set in, but we simply cannot give up. Let's quickly look at what's going on in Nigeria, because a lot has been said about warehouses holding COVID palliatives across the country that are being looted. But I think it's the comment and the reaction from the Governors Forum that has got people riled up, saving for a second wave. Now, nothing is certain with COVID-19, but is a second wave inevitable in Nigeria? The answer is probably yes. But does the record at the moment show we are heading to a second wave? The answer is no. What you see on your screen is the epidemiological report for week 43 in Nigeria, and that's from the 19th to the 25th of October. What it's basically saying and showing is a decrease of confirmed cases, although the NCDC says that may be partly due to logistics during the lockdown across the country. It's also showing numbers of those who have been discharged. It's also showing the case fatality rate in Nigeria, the number of deaths in Nigeria, and of course those international travels where those cases are likely to come from. So at the moment, any pointers to a second wave, the answer is no. And that's why you have people riled up asking, why are we saving for a second wave if we are still battling a first wave? Let's leave Nigeria and take a look at what's happening on the continent of Europe, where these numbers are coming from. Now, just to show you how serious and how overstretched health systems are becoming on the continent, there you see Europe. The land is very, very red. Doctors in Belgian city of Liège have been asked to keep working even if they have coronavirus amid a surge in cases and hospital admissions. About a quarter of medical staff in Belgium are reportedly sick with the COVID-19 pandemic, and 10 hospitals have requested that staff who tested positive but do not show symptoms, asymptomatic, must keep working. The head of the Belgian Association of Medical Unions told the BBC that they had no choice, even though they know this is risky. Patients may be contracting this, but they are short of doctors. The city is also said to be short of teachers and police officers because of the COVID-19 pandemic. From Belgium, let's go to Italy. Now, in Italy, we know that new measures were put in place on Sunday, but protesters turned out in their hundreds in Turin and Milan and other Italian cities on Monday to vent their anger, and sometimes violently, and the police also reacted in that manner with water cannons. Shortly after the national government order took effect, requiring bars, cafes, and restaurants to close their doors at 6 p.m. for the next 30 days as Italy tries to rein in the resurgence of the coronavirus. Now, a number of regions such as Lombardy, Piedmont have also imposed nighttime curfews, and many small businesses that are still badly bruised by an initial national lockdown in March and April say the new restrictions could bankrupt them. Italy has seen a rise in those cases. If we have the figures in Italy, we can pull them up for you at this time, but it's really bad in Italy, and those new restrictions are supposed to help the country. Away from that to some cheering news. One of the world's leading experimental COVID-19 vaccine being developed by the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom is set to produce immune response in elderly people just the same way it's doing in young people. Now, that's very good news because the older you get, the weaker your immune system and your immune response is likely to be. So the fact that we are seeing a positive immune response from the elderly, who constitutes a larger part of the death rates we are seeing across the globe to this vaccine, that is such great news. And AstraZeneca, the company which is helping to produce this vaccine, says there are no details yet. They have not provided details to the data behind the statement or when it will publish the eagerly awaited late-stage phase trial data to show this good news. But British Health Secretary Matt Hancock, when he was responding to this development, said a vaccine was not yet ready, but he was preparing logistics for a possible rollout, mostly in the first half of 2021. Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is expected to be one of the first from big pharmas to secure regulatory approval, along with Pfizer and BioNTech's candidate, as the world indeed tries to control COVID-19 pandemic. And while this was happening, the U.S. government officials are putting an early end to a study testing Eli Lilly. We talked about Eli Lilly 2 weeks ago. There were safety concerns, but now the independent monitors had paused enrollment in the study because of safety issues. And on Monday, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which sponsors the study, said a closer look did not verify a safety problem, but instead found a low chance that the drug would prove helpful for hospitalized patients. Now, Eli Lilly notes that the government is continuing a separate study testing for antibody drug in mild to moderately ill patients of COVID-19. And finally, a Christmas without a congregation. That's what Pope Francis is going to have. It will have to forego meeting Catholics at the annual event and Christmas masses in the Vatican owing to the resurgent coronavirus pandemic. Now, in a letter to foreign envoys to the Vatican, its foreign minister informed them that Christmas ceremonies would take a private form this year. Members of the diplomatic corps will not be present, and events would be made available online. Tens of thousands of Catholics typically visit Rome in December to attend services at the Vatican, but that will not be happening. Again, you would recall that also at Easter, Pope Francis did not have a crowd to preach to, and it just tells you how much COVID-19 has come to change our lives, our milestones, and our celebrations.
Thank you so much, Adesua. For those that can't celebrate Christmas properly, I'll say Joyce Noel to them.